Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Money Matters. This week is the special monthly edition where we're going to be talking about not my questions but your questions. So we've got three fantastic questions from three of our viewers that I'm going to be covering today. So if you'd like your questions to be covered on the future special edition, the once a month Your Questions Answered edition of Money Matters, just pop them in the question box below and the team will choose what they think are the most interesting questions or the most frequently asked questions and we'll get your name in lights. So the name of the first person is One Step Ahead. So you know who you are, One Step Ahead. I don't, I ain't got a clue. It says here, hi Paul, I work for a foreign company as an expat on a yearly contract paying taxes and receiving a salary in local currency. All right. Can I still qualify for a mortgage on a £50,000 house in the UK? Well, no. And yes. So your question is, can you qualify for a mortgage on a £50,000 house in the UK? No. Every single institution is going to want you to be here, except here's how we would normally do it. So when we're working with foreign investors to actually allow someone that's working abroad or maybe a foreign national, whatever reason, they're not in the UK, to buy property in the UK, let me give you the easy way to do it. Go to Company's House, set up a company for £12 or £12.99 or whatever it is. Now, you can't get a mortgage, One Step Ahead, but your company can. So you could be the 100% shareholder, you could be the director, you could be everything. So it's not you that gets the mortgage, it's your company. And the vast majority of buy-to-let mortgages are now to limited companies, not to individuals because of all the tax changes. So it's a good thing to do anyway. The next part of the question, or the final part of the question, my parents who've now passed away had a house mortgage free. I'm sorry to hear about that. And it's shortly being passed on to myself and my brother. I guess I can use this, well the word that's been used here is, I guess this can act as a guarantor. Well, yeah, I know what you mean, but to be slightly technical with you, it won't be used as a guarantor. The house can't be a guarantor, a person or a company needs to be a guarantor. But can you use it as security? Yes. And of course the other thing you could do with it, obviously it doesn't say how much the house is worth, so I don't know. But the other thing you could do with that is you could put a mortgage on it, put a tenant in it, and then use the money that's released by that equity, it's obviously going to be tax-free, to go and invest in more property. But often it's a 75% loan to value. So whatever that house is worth, you can take 3/4 of it out as a loan, okay? And typically you've got to put down a 25% deposit if you want to go and buy another house. So the fact you've got one unencumbered house means you can withdraw 75% of the equity of the value of that house. And if you're looking at houses of a similar value, that means you can go and buy 3 more. So one unencumbered property can get turned into 4 properties if you just want to do equity release, and so it's just a little idea for you if you want to do that. Okay, so next up we've got Gary Knight. Gary is saying, hi Gary, how you doing? If I transfer my existing pension, which is greater than £40,000, into a SSAS, so Gary's got some sort of work pension, some sort of employer-based, employee-based pension scheme. If Gary transfers that into a SSAS, can I still pay in from my salary up to the £40,000 a year limit as well? Good news, Gary, you absolutely can. This is a very bright, articulate question. Well done. So whatever you've had in the past from your previous pensions, you can transfer 100% of that from whatever pension scheme into a SIP or a SSAS. You're saying a SSAS, which is fine, small self-administered scheme. And that's not this year's contribution. So you can then add another, you need to be earning more than £40,000. You can't earn £1 and add, so there are rules, but as long as you meet those rules, can you also add, as well as it's called a transfer value, but I get the feeling you know that. So for everybody else that's watching, you can transfer your previous pensions into a brand new SSAS. Can you also put in £40,000 from your salary this year? Yes, you can. So anyway, the second part of Gary's question If I retire from work, I'm 55. Congratulations, so am I. Good year to be born, 1964. How would I remove the money from this structure, given my understanding that once you start drawing a pension from a SSAS, you come restricted to putting £4,000 a year, not £40,000 a year into it? And at what point would it be possible to start drawing a pension without any penalty? Well, you've asked me 3-4 questions there. So let's just take them one at a time. If I retire from work, I'm 55. Okay, stop. When you retire, inverted commas, does that mean you've got to stop work? No. So you can retire on paper, which means you can start drawing your pension. That doesn't mean you have to stop work. You could carry on working. You could stop working. You could carry on working and draw your pension. You could stop working and draw your pension. So you don't have to physically stop work just because you're choosing to start drawing down your SSAS. But where you're absolutely correct is that if you're 55, like me, like you can start drawing down your SSAS. You can start drawing your pension. Then your next part of your question is, essentially, once I've retired and started pulling the money out, can I still put more money back in? Yes, but you can't put £40,000 in, it's 4. So you need to think about that. So even though I'm 55, I haven't actually started drawing my SSAS yet. Well, I've only been 55 for like 6 weeks or something. So I haven't started drawing my pension yet. Why? Well, for many years I had a SIP, just for me. Now I've got a SSAS for me and Aniko and the kids. And I want to make sure I can still put money in, not necessarily for me, but for them. So I can still add money. I've got more flexibility to add more money if I don't actually start drawing it. So even though I could, I haven't. So it's a fantastic question in all sorts of ways, because we need to make sure we understand why and at what point we're drawing our pension and what that then does to our pension rights to build up a further pension. And then the final part of this question is, at what point would it become possible to start drawing a pension without any penalty? Well, I'm not really sure what you think the pension is, the penalty is, but there's no penalty for withdrawing the pension at 55. So as soon as you retire, here's the 2 things you can do. As soon as you retire on paper. First thing, you can take up to 25% of your fund out as a tax-free lump sum. So if you've got a £500,000 pension pot, you can take out £125,000 tax-free. The rest of that money, you can then withdraw, and if by penalty, I'm going to guess you mean tax, well, whatever amount of money you draw out is subject to tax. So if you wanted to draw out a pension but not pay any tax, you would pull out £12,500 a year, I guess. So that would mean that you're not paying any tax because you're below the personal tax threshold. I hope that answers your question. If you meant something else, or if I've misunderstood the question, just ask me in the questions below, and I'll pick it up and I'll clarify it. But I hope that's useful to everybody, and I hope specifically, Gary, it's useful to you. And the final question for this special edition of Money Matters is from Dion Condor Farrell. So Dion says, "Hi Paul, you mentioned using a virtual assistant for £1.50 an hour to help getting rent-to-rent deals with landlords. How are you getting VAs, virtual assistants, to do work for £1.50 an hour?" So that's part 1 of the question, and then there's part 2, but it's completely unrelated, so let's just focus on that. So why would you want to leverage a virtual assistant? Well, if I take you back to the very early days of my service accommodation business, within about 8 months of starting my service accommodation business, I had 20 service accommodation units. But because there were no courses, because there was no book, because there was no thing I could go and read or someone could go and mentor me, I had to make it all up myself, which is why I was then able to write a book about it and do a course about it, because I'd done all the things wrong, which I don't want you to do. So those first 20 service departments, they're all making about £1,000 a month. Happy days. But because I didn't have a channel manager, because I didn't have any systems, because I wasn't using VAs, I was actually employing 4 people full time. Now, how much does it cost to employ somebody full time? Well, if I just use a simple figure, let's say £20,000. Because you might get someone for 18, you might have to pay 22, you might have to pay 24, but let's just say 20. But now let's understand what it really costs to employ someone on £20,000 a year. You've got to pay national insurance, you've got to pay pensions, you've got to pay sick pay, you've got to pay holiday pay. So whatever their base salary is, add a third. It's always a third. It might be 30%, it might be 34%, but it's roughly a third. They will cost you £26,000 by the time you've paid your various taxes. In addition to that, unless they're all going to work from home, which is difficult, you're going to need an office. So if you've got an office with a desk and a chair where they can work, now you've got to pay for their mobile phones, you've got to pay expenses, you've got to pay rent. And very often this is going to add another £4,000 or £5,000 a year. So let's keep it simple. Let's say the basic 20k, holiday pay, sickness, national insurance and all that stuff takes it to 26, and then providing an office takes it to 30. Now if I got 4 of them, that's £120,000 a year. You'll follow that? 20k basic, plus the extras, plus some accommodation, office accommodation, 30k times 4 is 120. 120 divided by 12 is 10 grand a month. Scary, isn't it? 4 people that you might perceive to be not high wage earning employees, suddenly, woof, 10 grand a month. Bloody hell. Well, my service accommodation business, my 20 units were making about £1,000 a month each. So that's £20,000 a month profit, but 50% of that, half, was going on my staff and my office and my overheads. So what did I have to learn how to do? I had to learn how to leverage. Now I learned pretty quick because it's what I've done in my professional career. As well as the practical experience, I've got an MBA, Masters in Business Administration, whatever. So I've got the theory, I've got the practice. So what did I do? I brought in a channel manager and I started using VAs. Now here's what I think you're going to find is fascinating. With the channel manager, with all the systems, with a bit of software, instead of being able to manage 5 properties, these people could suddenly manage 50. So I didn't need 4, I needed a half. I needed a part-time person. Well, that's good. And then, instead of paying £20,000 a year, plus this, plus that, plus the other thing, £30,000 each, I started using virtual assistants. What's a virtual assistant? Virtual assistant, we've got 9 at the moment doing various things for our various companies. They're typically in the Philippines or perhaps in India. And you will get a virtual assistant to work for you from round about, well, you could in theory get them for $1.50 an hour. I'm going to say £1.50 an hour, so a couple of dollars, couple of pounds an hour, whatever it is. Now, if you need 20 hours a week at £2 an hour, but you've got no national insurance, no sick pay, no office accommodation, no nothing, it's just £2 an hour, but you only need 20 hours a week because now one person can manage 50, well, that's £40 a week. £40 a week times 4 and a bit, because there's 4.2 weeks in a month. You following me, everybody? It's less than £200 a month. So instead of £10,000 a month, when I didn't know what I was doing, bring in the systems, bring in the virtual assistants, it's suddenly £200 a month. So 200 as a percentage of 20,000 is 1%. So I've just reduced my overheads from 50% to 1%. I've doubled my profit by using this. So Dion's question was, how do you get them? Where do you get them? Onlinejobs.ph. Onlinejobs.ph. That's the Philippines extension. There's other places you can go, but that's where we get them from. How do you get them to do the work? Well, we use something called ScreenFlow. It's a free piece of software. We do the task. ScreenFlow records our voice plus whatever's happening on the screen, and then we send that video to the virtual assistant by way of training. And very quickly, they're very bright. They come up to speed fast. So I hope that helps Dion and everybody. And the final part of Dion's question, and the final question for today, is there a time of year that you shouldn't try to launch a service accommodation unit? Yes, I would say. I'm not saying don't. The most challenging time of year is going to be December going into January. So If you haven't launched it by October, November, probably wait until the next January, February. What you can do, of course, is you can list it now, but not open up the calendar and not take bookings until next February, say. So you can get some advance booking. Because if it's your first year, it's quite likely that January, you're going to break even or maybe even lose a bit of money. You'll be fine in year 2, but don't start December, January. All right, I hope you found that special edition of Money Matters interesting. To remind you again, if you've got any questions like that or your own questions to do with money, please put them in the question box below. We'll do our very best to answer as many as we can. We'll certainly answer the most often asked or the most interesting ones. As always, you've been wonderful. I've been Paul. See you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. If you've liked it, please literally like it. Subscribe to the channel. Get your friends to do the same. You've been wonderful. I've been Paul. See you next time. Bye-bye.